Geoffrey and Cattell Studder Kennedy was the seventh of 9 children to a vicar in Leeds in 1883. Today, we're growing tobacco and making... Hi, I'm Gabriel. This channel is all about the stories of some great people, where I make projects and search for that bit of wisdom that set these people apart. Check them out and leave me a comment. You could also like and subscribe to see more. Geoffrey grew to become a priest and a poet, a socialist and a pacifist, an author and a campaigner, all under the name his parents gave him. But he was beloved in his own day and remembered to this day by another name and for another achievement. He was remembered as Woodbine Willy, the army chaplain who gave away all his wages in the form of the best cigarettes he could find at the time. Woodbines. In 1914, Studder Kennedy had been promoted from a curate in Rugby to a vicar in Worcester. But when the soldiers were called up around him, he volunteered as an army chaplain in order to go along with them to war. Convinced that to stay behind the lines would be to betray the men that he ministered to, he chose to be stationed with the men in the trenches. Holding communion with the troops, he noticed that around 96% of them were smokers, and that in that place, far from home, afraid of death, sickness and being wounded, a cigarette brought far more comfort than a sermon. So Woodbine Willy started buying cigarettes. Of course, Geoffrey gave other things as well, New Testaments and prayers. He wrote letters home for the illiterate, and he would go running unarmed into open fire to give morphine to the injured and dying. But more than anything else, he gave away Woodbine cigarettes. He walked along the troop trains, handing them out. He gave them especially to those that were called up to the front lines, gave them to the injured and the dying. It is estimated that over his time in the army, Woodbine Willy gave away over 865,000 cigarettes and returned home penniless as a result. In 1918, Studder Kennedy was sent home on sick leave, having worked himself into the ground. But his devotion to the troops did not end there. He abandoned the life of an ordinary vicar and dug deep into poetry. He became scornful of the actions that others had so prized in him. Writing of his honorary title, Woodbine Willy. They gave me this name like their nature, compacted of laughter and tears, a sweet that was born of the bitter, and a joke that was torn from the years. Of their travail and torture, Christ's fools, atoning my sins with their blood, who grinned in their agony sharing the glorious madness of God. Their name let me hear it, the symbol of unpaid, unpayable debt. For the men to whom I owed God's peace, I put off with a cigarette. He famously said, "It is much easier to do and die than it is to reason why." But with all the people around him devastated by war and loss, he knew the time for doing and dying was over. And it had become necessary now to reason why, to comfort people, to provide for those whose lives had already been devastated, to try and put words on loss and find the expression for and meaning in grief. And so he committed himself to a road he found even harder. He wrote books, campaigned for socialism and pacifism and the needs of the working classes, and each time money came in, he poured it out again, giving it away to the poor, the wounded and the traumatised. When Geoffrey died of exhaustion aged 45, the Dean of Westminster refused him burial at Westminster Abbey because he was a socialist. They're done, they're grown. But the servicemen sent a wreath made of woodbines. The unemployed of the city of Worcester marched from the Labour Exchange to the cathedral, and King George V sent a telegram of condolence to his family, and Canon Raven of Liverpool Cathedral said this: "We let him work himself to death. He gave his life for us." The wisdom of Geoffrey Anquetil Stoddart Kennedy was that in the face of great need, the fact that he couldn't offer everything didn't stop him from offering something. In a world war, peace was not his to give, but a cigarette, some morphine, a prayer and some company were. Oh, darling, come and have a cigarette with me.
Oh, no, they're gross. And you're smoking all over my clean laundry. Can't you at least wait till I've got it away?
But darling, I'm exhausted. You know, they work Woodbine Willy to death.
That's not what Wikipedia said. It said it was complications of the flu caused by his weak lungs.
Yeah, because he was exhausted.
Sounds a lot more likely to be smoking to me.